I'll try to pace myself and pace the speed at which I'm going. But I do want you to be able to try to follow along with me and yeah, as we go through the steps in the process. So to outline the steps in the process, basically what you've done, if you were able to shoot some shots and shoot some photos, is you've taken essentially the raw photo. That's the photo that's not able to be shared. The reason why I say that is that those files are very large. The best comparison is to think, imagine trying to send your parents or somebody that you want to show your work, sending them a Photoshop file, like just texting it to them. It wouldn't work. There's some stipulations that you need to open that Photoshop file. First, you need the computer, then you need the actual program Photoshop to read the file. If you don't have it, then you're just going to be looking at a file name and not going to be able to open the file. It's a similar thing with raw photo files. While there's a lot of capability in the file, just like there's a lot of capability in a Photoshop file where you're able to manipulate, make multiple layers, do different things. With a raw photo file, you are able to manipulate and do different things and access certain information in the file, but it's not a shareable file, right? So the shareable file, basically what happens is that the computer does what's called compression. It compresses the file just like if you save the Photoshop file in a file type that you could send somebody. I think we're all familiar with a JPEG file, and you probably all save the Photoshop file as saved as a JPEG, saved as a PDF, saved as a PNG, saved as something else that's not the Photoshop file. It doesn't have the layers, it doesn't have all your edits and your filters and your whatever you might have done. And so that's a shareable file. And developers have agreed upon certain file types that everything can use. And a JPEG is one of those files that a phone, an email, a computer, a TV, anything can read that file and show you the information. So we need to get our raw files to a shareable JPEG file. Okay, and so I hope that I just wanted to take a second to specify that so you understand what we'll be doing with Lightroom. Okay, so you kind of have an understanding of why we need to use it. Sometimes it's real tricky to understand, well, why are we doing this? Why do we have to use this program? So I think it's important that you understand the reasoning for using Lightroom. So again, just to show this, I just want to specify to you. So we're going to be using Lightroom, and Lightroom is going to be our sorry, come on. And then so for Lightroom, what we're going to be doing is taking the raw files, which are not shareable, and we need to turn them into.
I'm sorry, are you sharing screen right now?
Yes, do you not see my whiteboard?
No.
Does anybody see my whiteboard?
No, it just says that you started screen sharing, but we don't see anything.
That's weird. Okay, 1 second. Let me do this a little bit differently. Okay. You see my screen now?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the raw file is a non-shareable file. A couple characteristics about the raw file, just so we know, is that the raw file is large in file size. That's a big part of it. And why a big part of why it's not shareable is that the file size is fairly big. The file size that you guys will be shooting on the cameras you use is about 25 megabytes, approximately. And another thing about it is that the file extension is unique to the brand of camera that you use. So for example, Canon, you're going to see a file extension of .cr2. Then Nikon, you're going to see a file extension of .nef, and another common camera, Sony, oops, you're going to see a file extension of .arw. Now this is if you're shooting in RAW. I remember I went through some settings last week of turning the camera to shoot in RAW. If you are shooting in JPEG, you are going to see the file extension of .jpg. Okay, now just to refresh, just in case, file extension. Okay, I'm just going to make this note. What is a file extension? It is that it is the lets the device know what program to use in order to open the file. So it's very key. If you don't have a file extension, then the computer doesn't know what to do, doesn't know what to use to open the file. So file extensions look like, you'll see this on Word documents, you'll see this on Acrobat files, you'll see this on PSD, Photoshop files, Illustrator files, InDesign files, CAD files. They all have a file extension and it's labeled usually, not usually, it is whatever is the dot and then the characters after. So an example is JPG, which is something that we are all pretty familiar with. Even if you didn't really pay attention to it, it's there, okay? So file extension. So the thing about file extension too is that it lets you know what type of file, the properties of the file, okay? Each file extension has different properties. You know, the properties of the file, okay? Now, why this is important is that we have different file types, okay? And I'm actually gonna, let's sec. It also lets you know one thing that I skipped is the type of file. Now we have different types of files that exist. Why this is important. We have image files. We have video. We have audio. We have text files. And we have what I call art files. So art files are things like Photoshop, Illustrator, CAD, and so on. Now, within each of these file types, there are certain properties that exist. So if we just take image files, because that's where we're living in image files in photography class, we have different properties. You have a JPEG that has different properties than a GIF that has different properties than a PNG. One common one in comparison between a JPEG and a PNG is that a PNG has transparency, meaning you can create something without a background. You guys might have experienced that. But a JPEG, you can't. You cannot have a transparent background with a JPEG. So that's two of the differences between the file properties. So it lets you know the properties of the file type, and these are some of the file types that we have, okay? So we're gonna be living in image files, and this is obviously the type that we're gonna be working with. And another name for this is raster graphic. Or raster image. Okay, so that's a term that you'll hear, and basically the explanation of this raster graphic and raster image is that it is made up of pixels. So made up of pixels. Now I talked about this a little bit, and these are pixels are squares of light or color information. Every digital image that you see on a screen is made up of these little dots. And if you zoom into an image, you'll actually see those little squares that create the image that our eyes put together. Basically, our eyes are putting together a bunch of spots, essentially, and turning it into the images that we see. So that's going to come into play when we talk about some of our export settings later today, because how many of those dots in a square inch matters to the quality of your image. And so file extension is a big part of all of this. So we have the raw file, which is a non-shareable file. And so that's what we're going to be working with. The thing is, the tricky thing is that we need to go from the raw file to the shareable file. So we need to go to, in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to go to a JPEG. And a JPEG is a universally shareable file. Universally shareable file. It is smaller in file size. The JPEGs we'll be creating are approximately maybe 1 to 3 megabytes. The file extension is universal. And the file is what we call compressed, which helps the file size, helps us get the file size down to a manageable amount. The thing with the JPEG is it can have different resolutions. We're going to have a resolution for digital sharing. That is email, text, assignment submission. And then we're going to have a version for printing. Now, these two resolutions, and we'll explain this in a bit, are two different numbers, okay? Has anybody ever heard the two standard image resolutions that exist? It's two separate numbers. One of them is for anything that you're going to just share digitally, either through the web or through email. And another one is if you ever want to print your file and make it a certain quality. Has anybody ever heard those two numbers referenced? Okay, so there are two numbers that are determined by what our eyes see. And so right now, the images that we're looking at on our screen are projected light. They're being projected at us. And so in projected light, our eyes need a certain number of squares or pixels in order to decipher an image. That number is a round number around 72 PPI/DPI. So 72 PPI/DPI is the number that we need to see a proper image. PPI and DPI are interchangeable, dots per inch or pixels per inch. It depends on what you're using it for. For printing, we're going to look at a different number. The number for printing is 300 PPI/DPI. So that number is determined because when you print something, an image, you are actually using physical medium. It's ink, it's dye. And with that ink or dye, there are certain requirements. And one of the most basic ones is that we need more dots. We need more dots to actually see a proper image. So with resolution, we have two separate numbers. For digital sharing, we have 72 PPI or DPI. And for printing, we have 300, okay? There is also another determination that these images have, just like anything. So for example, you create a composition, or you create a garment, or you create whatever it might be in your design, you're gonna have a dimension, a width versus a height, the most basic dimensions for a 2D design. When you're creating something 3D, you're gonna have a depth as well, depending sometimes. But width versus height are your most basic dimensions. If you look at the boxes that we are currently in, there is a width and there is a height. And that width and height is measured in pixels. Inches doesn't exist in the digital realm, right? So we're gonna measure the digital sharing in pixels, okay? So and then physical, the printing, that gets measured in inches. Width versus height, and here width versus height, okay? So the JPEG has a lot going on. So we want to get from the raw file to the JPEG, and we're going to make some determinations on how, on what we want to use the file for. And that's what we use Lightroom to set those standards, to set those things as we're creating the file, okay? So width versus height measured in pixels for the digital sharing, width versus height measured in inches for the files that we want to print. Now I'll show you some examples of this, of the difference of a file saved at 72 and a file saved at 300, and how this comes into play when it comes time to print. But just know for now that there's a difference. And if you try to print something that you saved at 72 DPI, you'll be very disappointed with the result. It's going to look not clear, not sharp, not in focus, not quality. You will lose quality. It's just how it is, okay? So, but we'll go into Photoshop and show dimension versus resolution, and show you how all that works and in action, right? But just for now, just wanted you to have a baseline understanding of some of the things we're going to be dealing with in Adobe Lightroom, okay? Another thing we're going to be dealing with in Adobe Lightroom is adjusting the photos, okay? Photo adjustment, okay? So one of the benefits of a raw photo, okay, is that you have access to all the light information. And I'm going to put this here. You have access to all the light information. That light information are things like highlights, shadows, individual hues / colors, exposure, detail, well, actually contrast. Balance. And we'll go through all of these things and explain what these are, but I just want to give you some examples of what light information is. So normally in a JPEG, all of this light information gets compacted together. So imagine all of these things being individual cubes in a box. That box is your image. But if you put that box in a trash compactor, everything will get squished together and made one into a smaller space. However, you won't be able to pull the pieces apart anymore. Once it gets compacted together, think of Play-Doh. Like if you have all your different colors, when you open the Play-Doh package, it's all red, green, blue, they're all separate. But if you take the red and the green and you start mashing it together and squishing it together, it's going to be very hard to then separate the red from the green again. And so that's what happens with a JPEG image. Everything is squished together. But with a raw image, all of these individual features and details are separate. And in Lightroom, we can access them. We can access them to enhance them, to make them more accurate, to bring out what we originally wanted in the photo. And so all of these things are at your availability when you shoot in RAW. It's like a Photoshop file. Your Photoshop file has multiple layers, but when you save it as a JPEG, those layers are gone. And you can't individually turn on and off layers anymore. It's a very similar thing with shooting a file in RAW with your camera. So this is the other thing that we're going to be doing with Lightroom, is that we're going to be dealing with and accessing the benefits of shooting with RAW photos. Okay. Another benefit of Lightroom, or thing that we're going to be doing in Lightroom, is we're going to be organizing photos. Okay. So because you're shooting a lot of photos, one of the things that Lightroom helps you do is preview and access a large amount of files at once. This is a big deal because if you've ever tried to open a bunch of files on your computer, say 6 Photoshop files or a bunch of Illustrator files, one thing you'll experience is your computer is going to like slow down. It may take forever for the files to open. Your computer is going to get bogged down, and it can be a time eater. It can make the time that it is for your project to really increase. So preview and access a large amount of files at once, which in turn saves time and resource. So when I say resource, how hard your computer is working, okay? The other thing that you can do is that we will be doing with Lightroom is we will be picking selects. So there's a term for this. It's kind of an interesting term, but that process is called culling. Okay, we'll be sifting through our photos and picking the best. Imagine this. If I go shoot a wedding, I'll shoot upwards of 3,000 total photos, but I'll only deliver to the client maybe about 900 photos. So that means I have to go and pick the best photos, and Lightroom helps you do that in a very fast way. It helps you save time in picking and culling your photos. You can also, in this, there is a rating system. And color tagging. The other thing that it lets you do, process a lot of images, is that you can organize in groups / collections. Think of these collections as folders. These collections are, okay, if I go and shoot a wedding on a certain date, I am able in Lightroom to group all of those photos together and come back to them at a later date, okay? So you get quick access to specific groups of photos, all right? Now, this feature right here is one of the most important features in Lightroom because of how large the files are that we are opening. So there's an interesting thing. We get to preview and access a large amount of files, and these files are large as well at once, okay? That's the key thing. it wouldn't be as daunting of a task if these files weren't big files. If they were really small files, then, you know, it'd be easier to say, let's open 100 of them at once and look through them, okay? But what Lightroom does is it really lays them all out in front of you, and you can go, okay, let me look through this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and determine which ones you want to use, okay? So quick access in that way. And then what we can do is, a last step is that we can actually export a large number of files all at once with specific So it allows us to set up exports, which is that transition. So the exporting process is the computer changing the raw file to a shareable file. So we're able to do this in a batch, okay? So this, another name for this is batch. Oops. Lightroom is really good at batch processing, meaning we can take a lot of files and manipulate them in a certain way in the export, okay? That is another one. I'm going to go back to the benefits. Another thing which with processing is that we can batch edit. You can copy and paste adjustments across different photos. So that's another great feature of Lightroom, is that you can duplicate whatever it is that you were doing on one shot. You can add that to another shot, and we'll go through on how that happens. And one last thing before we jump into it is that you're able, so you can copy and paste. Sorry, I lost my train of thought for a second. Copy and paste adjustments. What was the last thing I was going to say? Oh. So Lightroom remembers all of your actions automatically. And you can always undo. So there's no pressure. Like you can always go back to the original. You can always undo. Lightroom always remembers your actions automatically. And so there is some freedom there to try things, maybe mess up, and then go back to what you originally had, right? And so there's a lot of flexibility with that. So you have unlimited undo states, and even if you close the program and come back into it, it's going to remember where you left off, okay? And so there's no need to hit file save or anything like that for whatever your actions are and what you're doing in Lightroom, okay? So I want to go back real quick to this part. Preview and access large amount of files at once. One of the biggest things that Lightroom, how it does this is it implements a technique called referencing. I'll spell this right. Referencing, okay? Now, you might have experienced referencing if anybody has used InDesign, okay? So if you ever used InDesign and you dragged an image into InDesign, you built something in InDesign, and then InDesign told you the image wasn't available, either because you changed computers, you took out your hard drive, you disconnected from the network. The same thing can happen in Illustrator. If you bring an image in Illustrator and you disconnect from where the image is, it'll tell you that it can't find the image. What this is that what Lightroom does is it does not really open the image files. So you save your image somewhere and Lightroom does some computer magic and it goes and looks at the, hold on one second, sorry. It goes and looks at where the image is, and it goes, okay, I know exactly the location of the image. I'm just going to show you a preview. But it's not actually opening the image, and it's not actually manipulating it. It's just showing you a preview. So that's called referencing. But by doing that, you can open more images. So imagine that you had some powers and you could open a box that was in the other room without actually lifting the box. You could just do it with your mind. And so essentially that's what Lightroom is doing. It's not going around the corner, going into the other room, picking up the box, opening it up and looking at and moving around the things inside. It's referencing it. And so it's just telling the computer where the location is, or you tell the computer where the images are, you tell the computer where the location of the images are, and then it will remember that and go, okay, I'll go look there for the image and show it to you. If you change the location that you originally told Lightroom, it's going to forget. It's going to say, I don't know where you put the image. And so we might run into that, and there's a fix for that, but I just wanted to just note how Lightroom is able to open a large amount of images at the same time. Okay, so it uses a term called referencing, and a lot of Adobe programs and also programs that are working with a number of large files uses this process called referencing. Okay. Photoshop doesn't reference. Photoshop saves everything in the file. It actually takes the whole file into the layer. And that's why Photoshop files can get really big, because Photoshop doesn't reference. All right, so that's a verbal kind of communication of what Lightroom is, what we're going to be doing with Lightroom, what type of files we're going to be working with in Lightroom, and why. Okay. Next I want to actually open up Lightroom and take you through the process, okay, of how to do some of these things, how to start going through some of these things. Eventually, just so you know the end goal is that you get a file that you're able to turn in for your assignment. That's the end goal, okay? And so we're gonna go through that process. We might not get through the whole process today, but that's okay, we're gonna try, okay? And at the end of it, I'm still gonna give you more time to go back through this video and to learn and actually try to basically take the photos you shot for your light study and turn them into a file that you can turn in, okay? So that's the goal for what we're gonna do.
How many files do you want us to turn in? Like how many photos?
In this process, we're gonna go through that.
Okay.
For light study in particular, you're gonna turn in all the photos. But
Okay.
I'm gonna explain that. We're gonna go through that on how to do that. And when we're done with this, it's going to be this process for all of the assignments moving forward. Eventually, you guys are gonna turn in one file that contains all of the things for the assignment. And so we're gonna get to that point so that you're not uploading a bunch of photos to Canvas individually, and then it's gonna help organize your projects all into one Adobe Acrobat file. And so we're gonna start with Lightroom and end with Adobe Acrobat. And so that's the kind of progression of the process. For the light study in particular, you're gonna be turning in all of your shots because I wanna see the experiment that you did. And so normally you're not going to turn in everything you shoot. There's going to be a number of photos that I reference, whether that's 6 or 9 or 4, that you show me those individually, and you know, we go through that process. So cool. So before we hop in, I just want to give you guys a little bit of a mental refresher, a little bit of a break. We're going to take a quick break and come back at 9:45. So almost 15-minute break. Now it's like 12 minutes, but just a quick break, and we'll come back at 15 to the hour. And so 9:45 LA time, and we'll get into it. So take a quick break, get some water, and get ready to get into Lightroom. If you do have photos that you shot for this project on your memory card, go ahead and stick the memory card in the computer because that's where we're going to start. We're going to start at that point. By the first step in the process is taking the photos off of the memory card. So that's where we'll start. So let's take a quick break. 9:45, we'll come back and get as far as we can get. Okay, let's get back into it. All right, again, for this part, I'm going to be going through a lot of steps. So do your best, however, works best for you to either take notes or, follow along, do that. I'm going to try to get through the entire process from the first step, which is getting our photos off of our memory card. The idea is that the memory card is flimsy. It's fragile. It's a little piece of plastic. And basically, we want to get the important stuff off of the little piece of plastic and onto something a little bit more substantial. So, for example, your computer, if you don't have an external hard drive, or your external hard drive, if you have an external hard drive like this, or, a solid state drive. The idea is that we want to put the photos somewhere else that's more secure. In doing that, we want to always have in mind organization, okay? You want to think of these digital files as physical things that you would organize in your apartment or your house. Everything kind of has a place. So if you get new t-shirts, you might put them in a drawer, or hang them up in a certain place. And where those things are. Where, in the kitchen, you have the place for the forks, the knives, the Tupperware, the cups, the glasses. There's certain places for each of those things. And sometimes people label, if you're in an office, those cabinets would be labeled according to what's inside. So keeping with that concept, what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to label what's inside of these folders that we're going to create as we're putting things on different hard drives and doing things like that in different places. So every time we take photos off of our memory card, what we're going to want to do is label it. Okay. You should adapt or adopt these techniques, these organization techniques. You should adopt them no matter what. It's actually something that's really good for your digital organization of anything you do on your computer. Always put them in a folder and name the folder. Reason being, oh shoot, where's that project I did in Q1? I don't even remember what it was named. It's probably in your downloads folder. It's probably named 0012-456-242. And it's a very important part of your final project. You always want to name the location where you're putting your files, okay? So in order to do that, because I think we're all working on a different computer versus Mac versus Windows, and they look slightly different in their operating systems, I'm going to use a program called Adobe Bridge. Adobe Bridge is a window to your hard drive, just like Finder or Explorer is a window to your hard drive. Adobe Bridge is just Adobe's version of that window. That's all it is. It does the same exact thing as your Finder or your Explorer. On a Mac computer, Finder is this little square that looks like a smiley face down here at the bottom. Finder. On a Windows computer, it's the little icon that looks like Windows with different colors or where the start button is. What that does is it shows you your hard drive. It shows you your documents, your pictures, your downloads. It shows you all of the things, documents, pictures, downloads, and it shows you all of those things all in one place. It allows you to access your hard drive, right? And so without this look into our hard drive, we wouldn't be able to graphically see what's going on with the files. So Adobe created one that is a little bit more robust. It can show you things that maybe the other ones can't show you, like raw files or previews of Photoshop files, instead of just showing you the icon, right? And so on here on the left-hand side, so what I have open is Adobe Bridge. So if you guys have Adobe Bridge, it was one of the programs that asked you to download. You can go ahead and open it. And you're going to see a very similar view to me. The reason why I'm using Adobe Bridge for this process is because it looks the same whether you're on a Windows computer or a Mac computer. It doesn't really change. It doesn't really shift up much. Okay, so take a sec. I think if you guys have Adobe Bridge, I would like you to open Adobe Bridge in a separate window. And once you have it open, what you're going to see here on the left-hand side, actually, let's talk about the overall layout. 3 columns, left, middle, and right. That is going to repeat itself in Lightroom and in Acrobat. It is a layout system that Adobe uses a lot. 3 columns. The left column shows you some shortcuts to your hard drive. So you can see here, I have computer, I have my username. I also have desktop documents and pictures. Desktop documents and pictures are common shortcuts to organization structures on your computer. Okay, if I click on computer, which this is what I want you guys to do, what's going to happen is it's going to show me all of the hard drives that are connected to my computer at this current moment. That includes the hard drive that's inside of my computer and anything external. So that means a memory card, an external hard drive, so on and so forth. So what I'm going to do, as you can see here, I have 3 hard drives connected to my computer, external ones represented by these orange icons. And then I have my internal hard drive, which is represented by the silver icon here. I'm going to actually plug in to my computer, okay? A memory card. And I'm going to give it a sec. It's taking a second to load. 1 sec. Technology does not work when you need it to. 1 second. Huh. Wow. What's going on? Okay. Don't know why that's so finicky. All right. Took a second, but it was worth waiting on. what we can see here in Adobe Bridge, sorry about that delay. You can see my memory card here. I plugged my memory card in and it's named Untitled and we're good to go. So I can click into my memory card now. This is a memory card I took out of my camera. I took some photos on and now I can click into the memory card. When I click into the memory card, I'm going to see a series of folders. And the folders that you guys will probably see is DCIM. This folder here, DCIM. That's a pretty common folder where the photos get saved when you take the photos. When you click into DCIM, you're going to see some folders with essentially date numbers. I have a lot of folders in here because I've used this memory card a lot. You might only have one, okay? And so the goal is at this point is to find the photos that we shot. So I'm going to click into a folder and I think I have some photos here. And there's just some photos left over from a wedding that I shot. And so basically what I'm going to do is select all the photos from this particular group. I can do that by doing a quick keyboard key, which is Command A or Command or Control A, or I can drag a box around all the photos. As you can see, I have all my photos highlighted right now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click. If you are using a trackpad, potentially sometimes it's using 2 fingers and clicking down on a trackpad. And you're going to get this secondary menu that comes up. As we go through these processes in Lightroom and Adobe, right clicking is going to be your friend. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to right click and we're going to say, I want to copy these photos. And I'm going to copy these photos to a different folder. So I want to select the option down here that says choose folder. So we right click, copy to, choose folder. By hitting choose folder, what that does is it allows you to control where you're going to put your photos. I give my computer a second to catch up. All right. So once you hit choose folder, you're going to get another window that opens up and it's going to look familiar. It's going to look like Explorer or Finder. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to navigate to my external hard drive on the left-hand side. And I am going to go into a folder that I have made for, did I make it on this drive? Oh no, I made it on this drive. A folder that I've made for FITM, and then this quarter, and then this class. So if you see my folder structure here, I want you guys to make new folders as you do this and organize it in a folder for this class. Essentially, that's the goal. And then I'm going to make a new folder and I'm going to name it whatever this thing is that I'm doing right now. For me, this is Lightroom demo. For you guys, it'll be Light Study. So you always name the folder the name of the project. And then inside of that folder, I'm going to make one more folder. I'm going to name a folder raw because that's the type of files that we are putting in folder. So I want to name the folder for the type of file that is going into the folder. Okay. So if I open up this larger, you'll see my name structure here. I have the class, I have the assignment, and I have the type of file. Class, assignment, type of file. And then I'm going to hit open. And what that does is it gives me a progress bar that shows me that my files are being copied to my hard drive. And depending on how many files will determine how long this takes. That's the first step. We haven't opened Lightroom yet. The first step, to reiterate, is make sure that you copy the files from your memory card to your hard drive or your computer and organize them appropriately, okay? Very first step in the process. If you go to Lightroom before this step, it can get very, very, very confusing, okay? So we'll let this finish. Any questions about that part of the process while we're letting this finish?
My photos, it doesn't say raw, it says IMG.
So .img or just the icon says IMG?
No, like I'm looking at your screen and I see how they say, wait, let me see. No, it just says IMG.
With a number sequence?
Yeah,
And then are you in Adobe Bridge?
yeah.
And then you see where mine says .arw?
Uh-huh.
Yours doesn't say anything.
It says .cr2.
Okay, that's because you shot it with a Canon, and that is your file extension for Canon, for raw files. So you are seeing
Okay.
the correct thing. My
Okay.
file names are different because my memory card has a different file name setting.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. So this part might seem a little bit tedious, but it's important that you do it. There's no real shortcuts in this process. You kind of have to go through each of the steps and let your computer just do its thing. So while your computer is doing its thing, if you click a button and it's taking a second, don't get like click happy and start clicking away multiple times, because you actually might click something else, not realizing it in the process. And then it'll be tougher to track back to what you did or kind of understand where everything is in the, the sequence of things. So just let it do its thing. It is working pretty hard. Right now, my computer's working pretty hard. I'm screen sharing, Zoom's on, my camera's on, and I have Adobe open in 3 different programs. So things are going pretty slow, but just let it do its thing, let it process, and then it'll be better for it. Now I'm actually going to check, just to speed up the tutorial, if at least some of these files copied, and then I can stop the copy just because I'll have files that I can work with to show you guys the demo. Okay, we have some copied. So I'm just going to stop it just to speed up things, just to show you guys, keep it moving with the demo. So just to check to see if the file is copied, I'm going to go to my hard drive where I have this folder. Said winter 2020, 3700, Lightroom demo. I should have a raw folder in here. It's worth waiting on. Raw, and then inside of the raw folder, here you can see I have some photos. Okay. And like I said, I shot these photos with a Sony. So that's why my extension is .arw. And also my memory card, my camera has a setting for you can change the default name of the files. And so that's why the name of my files are different. Your guys' default name is probably image img with a bunch of numbers after it. Okay, that's probably the default. All right, so now I have my photos in a raw folder on my hard drive. Now I can go to Lightroom. So I have Lightroom here in another tab open. And when you open Lightroom, you're going to see a window that looks like this, but you probably won't have anything in the middle. That's because it's the first time you're using Lightroom. There are no photos in your Lightroom, okay? So one thing I want to reiterate is that Lightroom uses referencing. So if you've ever gone to the library and needed to find a book, you go to the card catalog or the reference catalog to look up the book. And the card or reference information is going to tell you what aisle, what section, what subject matter that book is located in. Then you go find the book. Each library is unique to the books that exist in the library. The FIDM library has a different set of books than the city library. So that means each library has a unique catalog and a unique set of information in that library. The same thing goes for each of your individual computers. Each computer has a unique set of photos that will exist in Lightroom. So if you upload a certain set of photos to one computer in Lightroom, and then say you're like, oh, let me go to another computer and find those same photos, they won't be there. Unless you actually move the entire library, okay? So just know that this process is pretty unique to the computer that you're doing it on, all right? So it's not necessarily transferable. There is a way, but just like it would be really difficult to take the whole library in FIDM and move it to another room or another building, that's essentially what you would have to do with Lightroom. So what we're about to do is unique to your computer, okay? Just remember that. So we have Lightroom open, and the first step that we want to do after we've moved our photos to our hard drive is hit this button down here in the left-hand corner. Just to note, I'm in the library tab up here at the top, okay? If you don't see these words, library, develop, map, book, slideshow, print, and web, they might be collapsed like this. You have to click this little drop-down arrow triangle at the top to see these options. And you want to be on library. So again, here at the top in Lightroom, hit the drop-down and hit library. Now, also another specific thing I want to make sure that I note, you must be in Lightroom Classic. If you are in Lightroom CC without the word Classic, it will look different because it is actually a different program. Okay, so once you're in library, we're going to go to down here in the left-hand corner and we're going to go to import.
I'm sorry, I didn't see the library, that thing. Like I clicked down, but I didn't find it.
Are you in Lightroom Classic?
Let me see.
So
Yeah,
in the
it's
top left, does it say Lightroom Classic?
Oh, it's not Lightroom.
No, Lightroom without the word classic is actually a different program. It must be
Okay.
Lightroom Classic.
Okay, got it.
So if you go back to Adobe Creative Cloud app, you should be, you'll see the version called Lightroom Classic. What I would say is try to follow along with some notes, and then you can download the classic version after, and then try to go through it. Or if you want to just bounce up and have it downloading in the background right now, and then you can hop over once it's downloaded.
Okay, I'm downloading right now.
Cool. So we're in the library tab. We're going to go to import down here in the left-hand corner. So there's a button down here that says import. I'm moving my cursor around it so you guys can see right here, import. And once you click import, another window is going to open up that looks very similar to our current window. One thing to note about Adobe Lightroom is everything looks the same. So you kind of have to pay attention to what you did to get to the point that you're at. Because there's not a lot of differences in the different windows. Notice we still have 3 columns and they're gray just like before. So the thing is, on the left-hand side, kind of like Adobe Bridge, we can access the hard drives that are connected to our computer. So what I'm going to do is, through the drop-down arrows, I'm going to navigate to the folder where I saved my photos. And I'm just going to click on that raw folder. And what I'm going to see happen is, in the middle, my photos are going to populate themselves. They're all by default checked. The great thing about this is I already organized my photos, so I know everything in this folder is what I want to use for this current project. On the right-hand side, there's a thing called file handling right here. Again, there's these drop-down triangles that Lightroom likes to use to collapse and to expand. You might have to expand file handling. Okay, you might have to expand file handling. And what we're going to do is we are going to select add to collection. Okay, add to collection is going to open up another tab. Now, when you guys select add to collection right now, you're not going to see anything. I have tons of collections. This was the part of Lightroom that I explained. Lightroom helps you organize. So what we're going to be doing is organizing, okay? We're going to be organizing our import. We're not moving our files. We're not changing their location on our hard drive. We're not doing any of that. This is an organization that is specific to Lightroom. Just like the books in the FITM library are organized in a way specific to that library. But here's another picture of why we want to do this. I know that I have upwards of 170,000 photos loaded into my Lightroom over the past 7 years. If I didn't organize them into groups, there's no way that I'd be able to find the photos later. If you look at the file name of these photos, it's not very telling. It's not very descriptive. It doesn't tell you when I shot the photo. It doesn't tell you what the thing is that I was shooting. It doesn't tell you anything. So we need to group our things into what's called a collection. So remember that word, collection. So we're going to click add to collection, and then we're going to click the plus button here. And it's going to open up a window that looks like this. I'm going to name my collection. Name it the assignment. Name it the project. Name it whatever it is that you shot, whatever the group of photos is, name it that. So for this instance, I'm going to just name it Lightroom demo 1/27/21. I'm going to hit create. It creates my collection, and then I'm going to hit the word import right here. Don't click done, hit import. What that's going to do is we're going to see a progress bar in the top left-hand corner. Lightroom always puts the progress bar in the top left-hand corner. And eventually, when it gets started, you're going to see all the photos populate in this middle section here. Okay, so now my photos are here. To give you a little bit of a tour of the library tab where we're at, on this side, the only menu system that you want to use is collections. Do not use folders, catalog, or publish services. Do not, I repeat, use catalog, folders, or publish services. The only drop-down menu on this left-hand side that you'll take into account is collections. Down here at the bottom, we have what's called a film strip. Now, if you don't see the film strip, it might be collapsed, like this. So you'll have to open it and you'll see the film strip. And what this is a way to click through all of your shots. What you have just above the film strip is different ways to view your photos. So the different ways to view your shots are, you can view your photos as the tiles, like the grouping this, or you can view your photos individually, like this, and click through your film strip. And you can see each of them individually. Okay, and there's some other ones here and different ways to view that right here. Another thing, another tour of the layout is your filters. So by default, the filters are closed. You see this word filter here. If you click it, it opens up all these different options available to filter the film strip view. So basically, what shows up in the film strip. You can change it. And then we have some options here that we'll get into over here with this drop-down menu that's defaulted to no filter. So film strip, it's a very powerful part of Lightroom. And then what you see up here in your main viewing area. After we import, we're gonna go to the develop menu. So here at the top, we're gonna hit the word develop, and our view is gonna automatically change to the single view. This area is where you get to see your shots in their largest form and evaluate them. I don't want you guys to get into a habit of deleting your shots on the camera, like looking at the small screen and going, oh, that's a bad shot, and deleting it. That's a really small screen. You can't really tell if it's a good photo. Wait till Lightroom to decide if it's a bad shot or not. At this point is when we do that step that we talked about called picking selects or culling. This is the point where you're gonna go, I wanna use this shot, I wanna potentially use this shot, I wanna potentially use this shot. And you're gonna sort it out at this point. So in order to do that, there are some keyboard buttons that you press, okay? In order to pick a select, you use the letter P, as in pick, on your keyboard. When you hit the letter P, something very quick happens. It tells you it's been flagged as pick. And then in the film strip, very, very tiny, very, very tiny, in the top left-hand corner of your thumbnail, there is a white flag. So using the arrow keys on your keyboard, you can flip through your film strip fairly quickly, and you can kind of tell and decide which photos are the ones you want to work with. Now, when you go through this first process of picking selects, this is not the final selection. You want to pick the photos that are maybes as well, because you want to add your look, do your edits, and then decide afterwards what's the best that you're going to export. So normally you would go through and hit the letter P on the ones that you want, and then there is an opposite to that. The letter X tells you that the photo is no good. The photo is no good at all. I don't want to use it, so I'm just going to hit the letter X. That is a no good photo. Okay, so the letter P is to pick. The letter X is no bueno. I don't want to use it at all. I don't even want to try, and it's not even a maybe. And if you notice on the letter X, the ones that you hit letter X on, there's a little black flag in the top left-hand corner of the thumbnail in the film strip. Now, I mentioned this before, but nothing is permanent in Lightroom, and you can always undo. So if you want to change your mind and turn a black flag to a white flag and actually pick it, you can just press the letter P and it changes it. Or if you don't want it to be flagged at all, you can click on the little top left-hand corner and get rid of the flag completely. So nothing is permanent, a rejection is not permanent, a pick is not permanent, and so forth. So you can do one thing. Say you want to do a lot of photos in a sequence. You can go back to the library tab and you can select multiple. So I can select, say, maybe this first 2 rows, and I can right click on my selection, set flag, and set it as flagged. And what that does is it's like me pressing the letter P on each individual photo. This is in the library tab. I'm going to go back to the develop tab and show you how to use the filter. Okay. So again, above my film strip, this section here that says no filter, I just want to see the shots that I've flagged. Okay, so I'm going to hit the drop down and I'm going to go to flagged. What it does is it dwindles my film strip down to just the shots that I've picked. So now I only seen the selects, the ones that I picked, the flagged shots. Okay. So that's the process of picking selects. Normally, you guys are going to do that when I ask you, I want 6 selects or I want 10 selects, but you might have shot 50 photos to try to get the best 10 selects. So this is the process, and this is how you dwindle it down to get those selects, okay? So with each assignment, there's a requirement where I do need to see everything you shot, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. And so there's 2 separate export processes that we need to do. One of those export processes is exporting our selects. So the part we're going to skip today is the editing. We're not going to edit the photos. And you're not going to edit the light study, okay? In fact, for the light study, you're not even going to pick selects. I actually want to see every single photo individually, okay? So we're going to imagine that this is all my light study photos right here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to do 2 separate exports, okay? One is going to be each shot individually. One rectangle, another rectangle, another rectangle, each shot individually. And another export is going to be what we call a contact sheet. A contact sheet. It's a grid of all your shots really small on a whole page. So basically, one export is each shot individual on a page, filling the page, and another export is a page full of shots in small, tiny rectangles. So two separate exports. Export our selects and export our contact sheet, okay? So first thing we're gonna export is our selects. For your light study, your selects are all the photos. It's a unique project, okay? Other projects, you're gonna have less selects. You'll have 6 or 8 or 9. So I want to select all. So a quick way to select all, Control A or Command A. It selects everything in my film strip. I'm in the develop menu, by the way. And then I'm going to right click. Remember I said right click is your friend. On my selection, I'm going to go to the word export and I'm going to go to the word export. And it's going to open a window. When we get here, if you are following along, if you're able to follow along, I'm going to close all of my drop downs just so that we go in order. We start at the same place. The good thing about this menu is that Lightroom's memory comes into play. So once we set some of these settings once, it'll always go back to that setting and you won't have to set that setting again. The very first setting we want to set is up here in the top that says export to. We want to set that to hard drive. Then the first setting that we're going to control is export location. And I know I'm kind of bouncing through this a bit quickly, but I do want to get to the end. And like I said, I am going to load this lecture on YouTube so that you can watch it again and follow along at your own pace. Okay, so in export location, we are going to go to export to, and we're going to select specific folder. The first option here, specific folder. After we select specific folder, what we're doing is we're basically saying, where do we want to put these photos? We're going to hit the option that's here that says choose. And does anybody have any idea where I want to put these exports? Where should I put these exports? Anybody have any idea? What's the most optimal place to save my exports right now for this particular project?
In the folder you created for the class?
In the folder I created for the class, but more specifically in the folder that I created for this project. So we're going to navigate to that folder. And then I'm in the project folder now. What I want you to do at this point is create a new folder. And remember how I had 2 different types of shareable files. Digital sharing was one for email, text message, website, so class submission. And the other one was called print. Now, the biggest differences in those 2 shareable files was the resolution. In this instance, I'm teaching you how to turn in your file digitally. So these are going to be a certain resolution. To reinforce that idea, we're going to name our folder based on the resolution. So these are going to be 72 DPI. So I create a folder for 72 DPI, and then I hit choose. I want you to uncheck this box here that says put in subfolder. Uncheck it. There should be no check right here. All right, we've just determined where we're going to save our files. So next, we need to determine what we want to name our files. So we're going to go to file naming, and you're going to check this box that says rename to. And from the drop-down menu, you're going to hit custom name dash sequence. So check the box that says rename to. From the drop-down menu, select custom name dash sequence. And then in the custom text, any ideas on what we should name the files? Any ideas on what we should name these files?
Do you want us to name it the way you wanted us to name our assignments, like the last name and then project?
So for the individual files, I think what's more important is the project name. So and the type. So we're gonna put some information in our file name. Here's what you guys wanna think about file names. File names reveal to you what the file is without ever opening it. That is how you should think about file names. So you should put in the file name the information that's going to tell you what that file is without opening it. That's a general rule of thumb. So for this instance, for me, this is our Lightroom demo. I'm not using spaces, I'm using dashes. 12721, and this is the 72 DPI file. So right now, you will know what the file is and also what resolution it is without ever opening it. That's the importance of a file name. You'll see an example here of what an example of a file name will look like, and then there you go. We've named our file. This section will change based on the project, and also the location will change based on the project. All right, the next thing we need to determine is the type of file. So I think it's already defaulted, but under file settings, you're gonna select JPEG. And you're gonna take your quality down to 80%. So JPEG quality at 80 under file settings. Then the last attribute we're going to control is image sizing. You're going to select resize to fit, and then from the drop down, width and height. And in the width, we are going to plug in a number. Now, this number is a general number that I've come up with that will give you a pretty decent size image and pretty high quality, but still manageable in file size. So image sizing, resize to fit, width and height, and we're just going to plug in 1920. In the height, we're not going to plug anything in. You're going to delete everything out of there. And then you want to make sure your dimension is in pixels. That is an important thing because we are dealing with the digital file and inches is not relevant. We need to be in pixels. And here we go. Here's the resolution. Now, based on the lecture today, does anybody remember what this number should be? I just brought it up in the file name.
72.
72. Yep. I tried to add cues that will remind you that the digital sharing, when you want to submit your stuff, is 72 resolution, okay? And we have 72 pixels per inch. And that's the settings. Now, when we come back here, any checkbox that you checked or drop down that you selected, Lightroom is going to remember the last thing you did and default back to it. So there's some things you won't have to select again. okay? So when I hit export, I'm gonna see my progress bar in the left-hand corner. It's telling me I'm exporting 20 files, and it just shows me my progress. Depending on how many files you have is how long that will take. And so, or how much your computer is doing at any given moment. So as that's running, there is one more thing we need to export out of Lightroom, and that's called a contact sheet. Now, the goal of the contact sheet is for you to show me everything you shot. So normally, the selects and the contact sheet's gonna have more photos in it than your selects. In the instance of the light study, they're gonna have exactly the same, okay? So in order to create a contact sheet, at the very top, we're gonna go to the print menu. So library, develop, map, book, slideshow, print. So you're gonna select print, and you might get a pinwheel of depth or an hourglass. Let the computer think, just let it do its thing. And then on the left-hand side, you're going to select this option that says template browser, and you're going to open the drop-down menu. Then you're going to see these options, Lightroom templates and user templates. We're going to select Lightroom templates. And under Lightroom templates, we want to select the option that says 4x5 contact sheet. When you have all your photos selected down in your film strip, you are going to see a preview of what one page of your contact sheet looks like. And here you can see it's very different. It's not one photo per page, it's actually multiple photos. And what this does is allows me to see everything you shot, kind of get an idea of how shooting went for you across your whole project. So now what I want you to do is save this file as JPEGs. So in order to do that, over here on the right-hand side, you're gonna go to image settings, print job. We're gonna drop down print job. And from here, you're gonna select, instead of printer, we're gonna select JPEG file. So it defaults to printer like this. So like it's, if you wanted to print this with a printer connected to your computer, but we're gonna change that to JPEG file. And we're gonna change our resolution to 72, common number that we've referenced for digital stuff. And we wanna select our JPEG quality. We're just gonna dump this down to 60. So the reason why is we wanna control the file size, so we don't need full quality image in this instance. Once you set these settings, JPEG file 72 and 60, it will always be here. You won't have to set those again. And then you're gonna select the button down here in the right-hand corner that says print to file. Again, it's gonna ask you what you wanna name the file and where you wanna save it. So I'm actually just gonna create a new folder real quick called Lightroom Demo 12721 contact sheet, because that's what it is. And I'm also going to name my files this in the Save As section, the project and what it is. It's a contact sheet. And I'm going to hit save. Again, I see my progress bar in the top left-hand corner. All right. Let's go look at our folder. So if I go to my Lightroom demo assignment folder and I go here, 72 DPI, here we have it. I have my individual shots. I have my Lightroom demo contact sheet with all my shots on there on one paper. And there you go, they're all my exports. Now, you might say, okay, do we upload all these individual files to Canvas? This is what I'm turning in? There's one more step. And that's where Adobe Acrobat comes in. This is the final step, the completion of this export process. Okay, so we're gonna open Adobe Acrobat. And when you open Adobe Acrobat, let me open it from scratch so you can see what this looks like. You're gonna get a window that looks something like this. It might show you all of your PDF files on your computer in this column here. We're gonna go to at the top in the right-hand corner, there's an option called Tools. And under that option, we're gonna select this purple option called Combine Files. So up here, Home, Tools. Again, you must have Acrobat Pro DC, not Acrobat Reader. It won't do the same thing. Acrobat Pro DC. Under Tools, Combine Files, and we're gonna get this window. Now, you have two options here. You can click the blue button that says Add Files, or you can open your Finder. Sorry, let me organize my windows a little bit better. You can open your Finder and drag and drop files into this window. So basically what we're gonna be doing is we're gonna be combining all the files that we just created with Lightroom. So I'm gonna go to my project file, my project folder, sorry. And Lightroom demo, 72 DPI. And I'm actually gonna select all of my photos, the selects, and then I'm gonna drag them in to this window. And you'll see a little progress bar here with them populating. And then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna go to my contact sheet folder and I'm gonna put in my contact sheet in here. And one cool thing, notice like the contact sheet fell out of order in the middle of my shots. I can drag and drop things in this to organize them differently. So you could have things, if anything falls out of order, like say the times of the day fall out of order, you can organize them here in a proper order. And then the last thing that I want that every assignment is gonna have, it's gonna have a small write-up. I call it a write-up. It basically is an explanation of what happened in the project and what you were shooting. In every assignment description, that write-up gets saved as a PDF. Okay? So that assignment description gets saved as a PDF. I am just going to, for purposes of this demo, I'm going to drop in the syllabus. So that you see a PDF, an actual text document also being combined into this single document, which you guys will be doing this. So when you write your write-up in Word, I would like you to save it as a PDF, not a Word document. Save it as an Adobe Acrobat file. That option is there and available to you in your save menu. So I'm going to drag a PDF in here, and as you can see, that file is here too. So I have all my photos, my contact sheet, and my write-up. I like the order that they're in, so I'm going to hit the word combine here at the top right-hand corner, and we're going to see green check marks pop up as it combines the files. I'm going to let my computer, it's just delayed just a little bit. And there we go. Now, on the left-hand side is a little icon that looks like papers. If you click on it, you can see the individual pages of your Acrobat document. So as you can see, each photo takes up its own page. Then I have my contact sheet. Then I have what would be your write-up. In this instance, I just used the syllabus to put in here. If you needed to, if you say you included something you don't want, say I just wanted the first page of the syllabus or the first 2 pages, I can actually select pages here and I can delete pages. And then those get deleted from the document. You can also add other files if you forgot something. You can click in here and you can right click and do insert pages from file, and you can go select a different file to put in if you forget something. So this is pretty robust in what you can do in creating these single file, multiple page PDF files, okay? So now we need to save this file so you can turn it in. In order to do that, we're going to go up to the top and hit File, Save as Other. This is key. Make sure that you choose File, Save as Other. Okay? Reduced file size PDF. The reason being, we're trying to control the file size. We want you to be able to manage this fairly easily, get it uploaded fairly easily, okay? And just not have any problems. So we're going to click on Reduce Size PDF. And from this point on, you want to choose whatever is the positive option that the pop-up window gives you. That could be yes, that could be replace, that could be okay. That's what you're going to choose, okay? So in this instance, it's yes. I'm going to hit yes. And I'm going to name my file. Any ideas what I should name my file? This is the file I'm about to turn in for the assignment. Any ideas what I should name the file? No ideas? You're about to turn in an assignment. What should you name the file? I gave you guys some specifics the first week.
The project name and then your name?
So you should put your name first,
Oh, okay.
then the project name, and then because this is the final submission, final. .pdf, you're going to keep the file extension. The file extension for Acrobat files is .pdf, so you want to keep that file extension. And we're going to put the file in the location of the project. Going to put it all in the same place, in the same folder. We're going to hit save. Now remember, always, no matter what the pop-up window is, at this point, hit the positive option. Save, yes, okay, replace, whatever it's asking you to do, you want to do it. So we're going to hit save, and then another pop-up window is going to come up, Then we're going to hit OK. And then we're going to hit save again. And we're going to hit replace. And it's going to save your file. That is the file, that final file that we get is the file that you turn in. Okay. So we just went from our memory card to the file that you turn in. This is what you guys are going to be doing with your light study photos. And you're going to have until next week to turn them in. Okay. And you're going to have this week to do some more research on another topic that we're going to be talking about next week, and go through this process of taking your files from your memory card and getting them into this format to turn in. Okay. My computer is moving pretty slow right now, but eventually it'll save the file, and then you'll have a file that you can use to turn in for your assignment. This process will repeat itself for every assignment that we have in the class. Okay, so eventually you're going to get very familiar with this process. But I wanted to take this time to get through this process and show it to you early so that you can start to get a grasp of this. If you don't have this process down, then it's going to be very difficult to do anything with your actual shots. So you kind of need to understand this process on the computer as much as you need to understand how to work the camera and how to do the creative stuff. This stuff sometimes is the boring stuff, so I wanted to get through it and spend some time with it. Okay, so like I said, I will upload this lecture in its entirety to YouTube, and you can follow along with it, okay? And go through the process. So next week, what we'll be doing is your light study, and I'll open it up and you'll be able to submit to the light study submission in this format. So let's go look at the format real quick. The file that's saved out is this file right here. It's a PDF, and when I hit preview, I have all my photos and I have my written stuff as well. And my computer's just lagging, but it's all here. You can see the number of pages. Here's my contact sheet, and my write-up should be here as well. Computer's just slow right now, but it's all here. And the file name, Richard Gordon, the project name, final. So I know what the file is before I open it. Okay, this is what you'll upload to Canvas. Just to show you why this is important, I have about 23 photos in here, or 16 photos. Each of the raw files for those photos were about 50 megabytes each. The total size of the document that I'll be turning in is 6 megabytes. So I went from one photo out of 20 being 50 megabytes. So if we just turned in the raw files, that's 50 times 20 in size, to compressing it down, shrinking it in, and the single document is 6 megabytes on a whole. And it's showing me a lot more information in one document. So that's the importance of why we go through this process. Okay. All right. Now I just want to intro to you the other part of research that you'll be doing for homework. So for homework, what you're going to be doing is researching a term. Similar to when you researched ISO, aperture, and shutter speed, you're going to be researching and adding supporting information into depth of field. Now I want this to be 1 page minimum. One page minimum. Wiki cannot be a source. And you must have at minimum 3 different sources. Okay? And what you're going to tell me is, oh, and one of the sources must be a YouTube video explaining the term. Okay, so that's going to be your research. You got to include the link to the YouTube video. You must watch the YouTube video because that's the point of finding the video. Don't just go and find the video and not watch it. Trust me, you want to watch it. You want to learn this term because it's going to be what the basis of our next assignment is going to be. So I'll include this into the in Canvas in the assignment description, and we'll go from there. Any general questions? I know you might have questions about the process and stuff like that, but any general questions about anything? All right, cool.
Where are you gonna put the YouTube video for the demo? Like, what are you gonna label?
I'll send it in an assignment. I mean,
Okay.
an announcement. I'll let you know when it's loaded. I was just about to tell you guys that it's going to take me a second to process this lecture. It's a big file. It's a long video. But once it's processed and uploaded, I will make an announcement in Canvas and you guys will get an alert with that link.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Oh, and Michelle, I meant to ask you, did my response to your message, did that help? Were you able to get to the bottom of taking some shots?
Yeah, I was able to take photos. My the little I forget what it's called at the top where you're supposed to like look through, that's still completely black. So I had to
viewfinder.
Yeah, it's like completely black. I don't know
Okay,
what
so
happened.
there's a button on the back of your camera. It looks like this. That button right there. When your camera is on.
Can you stop screen sharing?
This button right here.
Uh-huh.
If you press that once, that's probably, this is the mode you're in where it's called live view. If you press it again, it'll turn off live view and show you information on the back, and then you can look through here. That's probably what's happening.
Okay.
So your live view is defaulted. This is live view where you see it in the screen. But if you press this, it turns the view to your viewfinder and it shows you information on the back of the screen.
Is that how you want us to take the photos, like that?
I want you to take the photos like this, where you look through the viewfinder. Yes.
When I get home, I'll see if that works. That fixes it.
Okay. All right. So that was a lot. I know you guys probably need to decompress and not look at your computer for a few hours, because definitely that was a lot to process. So once I get the YouTube situated, I'll send a link to the class, and then yeah, I'll explain in in the message to what to do next week, and then we'll just keep going. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time. Danny, I did get your message about the camera and the hiccups with the camera and the memory card. That's okay. You'll have some time to take the photos and submit as we are submitting the assignment by next week. So hopefully that'll give you some time to take the photos.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, guys. So if there are any questions, message me in Canvas and I'll get back to you. And look out for the YouTube link with this lecture for you to follow along and go through this Lightroom process.
Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, guys. We'll
Thank
talk soon.
you.
You.
Thank you.
See you.
All right.